Every summer, it feels like we go through this phase where the Fallout 4 modding scene just peaks. You're getting a constant flow of incredibly high quality mods. Unfortunately, in this video, even a large chunk of these mods will be available on Xbox, with one mod actually being one of my favorite mods ever and probably one of the best weapon mods that I've ever used in Fallout 4. With that said though, we all know we're waiting patiently for Starfield. We want to know when we'll get to experience this massive and epic space RPG. But if you want to get into space right now, you need to check out today's video sponsor, Star Trek Timelines. This is the ultimate Star Trek mobile RPG, and it is completely free to play on all devices. This game is going to take you on an adventure through space. You'll be following the story and saving others as you warp to all kinds of new locations, but also building up yourself as a captain and of course building up your spaceship. There are all kinds of ships to choose from, including many of the Star Trek staples like the USS Enterprise and the Voyager, but of course you need a crew to go along with that, and you'll be able to recruit some of your favorite characters from the Star Trek franchise. And during this, you're going to get involved in some epic PvE wars, as you'll be saving others and even completing missions to level up and increase your captain rank. Or even if you want a bit more of a challenge, you get into some PvP battles to keep things extra competitive. But there will always be something to do, as you unlock new characters and rewards via daily missions or campaigns in the daily hub, and you can truly influence factions here or even partake in larger scale events. And you don't need to do this alone, as you can invite your friends to join your own fleet. And since you are watching this video, you are actually in luck. This week, Star Trek Timelines is running a challenge to give 5 models of the USS Enterprise to 5 new players. All you need to do is download the game via that link in the video description or by scanning the QR code on screen and reach Captain Level 5. So stop waiting and jump into space now so you could start this battle. But looking back at Fallout 4, I really have to ask the question, is this the best weapon mod? This new mod just released a couple of weeks ago that may actually be one of the best weapon mods to come to Fallout 4 in years. The Charger pistol pretty much just checks all of the boxes for me. It'll be a new weapon platform with a Gauss-based pistol that actually occupies this pretty interesting slot in Fallout 4 in that it's going to be a higher tier, a higher damage pistol that you could use into the later game and are really intended to use in the late game. And on one front, just from a vanity perspective, this weapon looks incredible. It is intricately detailed and has a good combination of attachments and weapon mods to visually change things up. You can have some makeshift attachments because you are still in the Wasteland, let's not forget that it's Fallout 4, but also some higher end and higher tech attachments that will genuinely change how this weapon functions and feels. And it feels like changing how this weapon functions and feels is a pretty cornerstone aspect of the overall design, as one of the core customization options will vary between it being a break action charge revolver or just a more familiar semi-automatic laser weapon, which yes, those are two drastically different things. So on one hand, you have higher damage, but only 6 shots, and of course it's going to be a charge weapon, so you have to charge up the shot and then it'll deal more damage the more you charge it. This coming with a very different reload style and function as it is break action. You're going to have these 6 revolver shots basically ejected from the weapon and you have to reload them one by one. Or alternatively, you have a semi-automatic style where it's just kind of like a normal laser weapon. You fire through all of your shots, there's no charging or anything like that, and then you reload pretty simply. And this is balanced pretty well where depending on the configuration you use with this weapon, you may choose one or the other. It's not like one is a clear right answer here. And via the weapon customization overall, you could turn this into a shotgun, a rifle, or keep it as a pistol if you want. It really has the full wealth of customization options Fallout 4 typically offers. And a launcher variant, which just feels like a little extra special added thing on top that you could use from time to time and can be very, very powerful. And there's even a couple of bonuses with this mod if all of that somehow wasn't enough. You can get things like Gauss grenades, which will now spawn and occupy the world, and even a special unique variant that can be found in one static spot in the world. This can't be modified, but it has some very specific, powerful, and special abilities. And just overall, this is one of the coolest weapons for Fallout 4 ever, as not only is it just a new lore-friendly weapon, which is great in its own right, we definitely need more of those, but it actually occupies an interesting weapon category in the game, almost like a weaker and earlier version of the Gauss rifle, but a genuinely powerful choice if you're speccing down the pistol tree. The modifications are unique and interesting and is all around a must download for me, something you'll always see in the background of my videos, and I think you should definitely give it a shot, especially considering it's available to basically all of you, being on both PC and Xbox. But similar to the Perfect Weapon mod, we also have what I think is one of my personal favorite player home mods with the Way Home 1, Concord Hideout. Hideout. There's going to be a new traditional styled player home set up in Concord. It opens up with a short and simple quest where we must repair a robot. This robot tracking down a few locations. I wouldn't be surprised if there's additional player homes offered via this mod or a follow-up mod in the future, but it's really nice. I think having the quest makes this player home overall more interesting, even though it's only a couple of minutes long. But from there, you'll gain access to your gritty, Wasteland-esque player home that I absolutely love. The styling on this is really top tier, at least in my eyes, and of course that's going to be very subjective. It's relatively compact, which I also like. Sometimes player homes become very, very large. And although some people may like that, I like having everything just a few steps away. I want to be in the player home for a relatively short amount of time. This is not a settlement. You're not including settlers here. You're not going to be editing the interior. What you see is what you get, so you have to actually like this style. And for me, I love this style. I think it looks really good. It looks like somebody's actually living here. You're actually in the Wasteland. It'll of course have all the major features you want, all of the workbenches, even some pretty cool storage options that are a bit more hidden. This does have quite a few unique features, like a custom workbench where you can actually craft purified water, a force field for the power armor, which functionally doesn't really mean much, but just kind of this cool little thing that will play an animation as it opens up and closes, and it just makes the overall thing a bit more interesting, as well as this castle mode, so you can lock down your player home if you really want to, which I think looks absolutely amazing. Most of that is just for aesthetics, but I still think it's a pretty cool and nice feature to have that elevates the mod overall. It's a relatively simple mod, but for me, the visuals are what really carry this one and made me enjoy the home overall. I feel like it's a good mod to have in tandem to something like Sim Settlements, where this player home can be your personal player home, and then you can have a settlement generating resources with a bunch of people to go back to also. But if you play Fallout 4 for long enough, you'll almost certainly hear the comment with, well, you know, most of this stuff would have been looted since 200 years past. You wouldn't just be finding all this junk, aid items, or even weapons floating around the world. And well, if you've said that, or even just heard somebody say that, and you're like, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense, now you can make it a reality with the innovative new mod known as Looted World, which will remove the vast majority of the statically placed junk items, food, weapons, armors, and more from Fallout 4's Commonwealth. So largely now, what this means is, as you explore Fallout 4's many locations, things are just pretty desolate. You're not going to find the odd ammo laying around. You're not going to find a bunch of stim packs conveniently placed outside for you to loot. You will still find the odd junk item or weapon from time to time, but the vast majority of things are gone now. And although it does have an impact on exploration and what you're spending most of your time doing, how long it takes for you to loot out an area is going to be much more condensed with this mod. It also does have this pretty interesting impact where it's going to force you to rely a lot more on either taking out enemies and enemy bases for items, trading for items, which I feel like is one of the most underutilized aspects of Fallout 4 by default, or even just crafting these items for yourself. As well as there is this kind of added bonus where this will improve performance a bit, as it is removing a ton of miscellaneous items spawned throughout the world. It's definitely a particular mod, not a good one for everyone, but it definitely ups the immersion. I could see it being really good on a more hardcore survival based playthrough, where yeah, it probably doesn't make a ton of sense for you to just find a bunch of stim packs conveniently waiting for you somewhere. Although another phenomenal mod, if you truly want to get into the handmade and makeshift in Fallout 4, is the Valve Handgun. It's going to add in a very basic but incredibly customizable pistol into the game that is going to use this single shot pressurized design for it. This is another weapon that occupies a really interesting spot in the gameplay. It's a single shot throw-weight pistol that can deal a decent amount of damage, but you only have one shot with a fairly long reload, so you really have to make that one shot count. It's almost like a pistol version of the anti-material rifle, but of course not nearly as powerful as an anti-material rifle. And the overall design here is a big selling point for me. It truly is handmade and makeshift. That's the overall mantra of this mod. And the animations do take things up to the next level. That's pretty essential on a weapon like this that's being single shot. You're going to be reloading all of the time, and the Valve animations this use are custom and look very good in game. And although this weapon on its own is pretty awesome, one of the pretty cool things about this is it's the start of something larger. The wide Wasteland warehouse is planned to become a much bigger project, and in the future not only have the Valve handgun, but a variety of additional handmade style weapons added into Fallout 4. The other has plans right now for nearly weekly updates, not only to this weapon, but hopefully to some of the other newly released weapons that will come in the future. And overall, I think it's a great entry to Fallout 4 and something that we should be hearing more about in the future. But as I mentioned before, we really are just kind of in the Starfield waiting room. So how about a mod making Fallout 4 a bit more like Starfield? Starfield Vibes is a new Fall UI based HUD preset that will attempt to bring some of the Starfield look into Fallout Fallout 4. It's going to be a relatively minimal new HUD that you could use in Fallout 4 that is obviously very similar to what we saw in the Starfield gameplay reveal. It's not quite an exact match, but you definitely see it's going for that overall similar vibe, hence the naming of the HUD. One of the other pretty cool things is something like this is going to be incredibly subjective. You either really like this or you really don't. But since it is using Fall UI as a framework, you can easily edit this with just the in-game menu if you want to make some minor tweaks or even some larger changes to how this HUD looks. If you are trying to up the immersion in Fallout 4, two essential mods are going to be the first person running with hands animation and the first person swimming animations. These are incredibly simple, and seeing how things work in vanilla versus how things will actually work once you install this mod kind of gives you one of those moments like, oh yeah, that is kind of odd how when you're swimming or running in Fallout 4 in first person, you can actually see your hands. In many other games, you are able to see your hands, and with this mod installed, it's not like things are overly intrusive. I think I in general actually prefer this change, but each of these are very simple mods and effectively just going to make it so your hands appear on screen when doing these actions, which I personally like. I think it's actually a pretty big upgrade, in part just because it feels a bit more novel. When you're running an ultra modded Fallout 4, changing as many aspects of the game as you can, making them feel fresh is good, and being able to see your hands, although relatively minor, is a nice and fresh change to the game. Defective Synths is a pretty interesting one in that it's going to basically be a feral ghoul replacer if you want it to be. What it'll do is replace some of the feral ghouls in Fallout 4 with these new defective synths, basically synths in various states of disarray that are now going to function like feral ghouls. The lore behind this being that these synths have some kind of defect to them or they're not functioning properly and basically are just ghoulified, attacking basically everything they see. By default, this will be a flat out replacer, so all of the feral ghouls will now appear as these defective synths, although you can use this with the More Feral Ghouls mod. This is an exceptional mod, and if you use it this way, it will just be added to the leveled list overall. It's definitely the better way to use it, and overall the design of these is pretty awesome. It almost gives you Terminator vibes with these synths hunting you down, and it ups the scare factor of those feral ghouls. But with the hunt of trying to make the NPCs in Fallout 4 a bit more interesting, we also do have Unique NPCs LITE. Unique NPCs is this massive and awesome mod that will bring pretty comprehensive overhauls to nearly all of the NPCs in the game, making it so there's just far more variation among NPCs, both creatures and humans. One of the problems being it is a massive multi-gigabyte download that can have a pretty big impact on performance. This LITE version is going to bring a couple of the staple features of that mod to Fallout 4, making it so now NPCs will have randomized weight and randomized height in-game, and even some of them have names. It's relatively simple, but it is kind of cool, and it's kind of a nice immersive change. When you're walking around looking at raiders, you'll notice, oh, some are shorter and heavier, some are tall and thin. The typical body types that you find in Fallout 4 will be far more diversified with this mod, and it almost does make it feel like you are actually facing real people. It's a relatively simple one, but I think a lot of people are turned off by what is otherwise an awesome mod with unique NPCs, again, due to the size of it and the performance impact, and this gives you a bit of a taste of that mod without all of the baggage. Then we do have Performout, which is going to be one of those mods that some of you absolutely love and some of you ignore, as what this mod is going to do is optimize all 40,000 textures in Fallout 4, with the overall goal of boosting your performance. And for some of you, that's all you need to hear. You're going to download this and hopefully you'll get a couple of more FPS in the game, but in general, the overall idea behind this one was it will lower the texture quality on some of the things that you hopefully won't notice, but really with the overall goal not just being to lower, but to optimize things. The things you see all the time, like walls, doors, etc., aren't impacted all that much. But some of the very tiny things that across an entire game can have a big impact on performance and that you very rarely are looking at closely will actually have their textures reduced, and in turn you get more performance. It's definitely one of those mods that won't be for everybody, but I want to shout it out here because I know some of you will definitely love this one, and there's even many users already reporting very nice performance gains from using it. But let's look at Fallout 4 mods. Things have been going incredibly well as of late for this game. There's just been a flood of new content, a lot of very high quality mods. We're definitely getting quality over quantity as of late, which I'm a big fan of, especially because quantity isn't all that low either. And thanks again to Star Trek Timelines for sponsoring this video. If you want that definitive Star Trek experience right now, pick out your ship, recruit your crew, and jump into space battles today using that link in the video description. And sponsors like that do really help out this channel. Just recently we've had some odd demonetizations, like the Fallout 4 multiplayer video getting demonetized, which just seems weird to me. I'm basically going to make no money on on that video now, and even at times the performance will be hit as a result. It'll be shown to less people on YouTube because it's deemed not very safe. With that said though, as always again, I thank you all for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this one, and I hope to see you all next time. Later.